A plan is cancelled. So I'm here again doing I get it again. How nice. How nice, huh? I'm back. Another 2 hour maybe. I really should not say that. Hmm. Interesting. This is my Minecraft. Yeah, it is. This is bullshit. One up. Chill, chill. Hmm. What is the bad one? Or words, right? Now how you get them again? The bar. The bar? I think bar, huh? Interesting. That is so far. I need so much more. Hmm. Ever. Hmm. Really, really, really. It's rare. I think that's it, right? I mean, 20 pepper, it's very nice. But I can get so much more if I just, you know, go to the end. I mean, stronghold, I mean. It's working fine. Fuck you, tree. I'm gonna blow you up. I'm gonna blow you up. I think I need mud, no? No, mud is kinda cringe. Besides of this. I need tower, man. What is it called? Oh my god. What? Hmm. I need glowstone? What is that bullshit? Like what? Where are we going? And where? Go? No, let's not go. Kill me. Pepper, I don't need. Decomposition? And what is it for? I mean, I know what it is for. Am I kidding? Anyway, let's do that. How to make them? Bone meal straw? How do you get some? Oh well. What? What? Knife. Knife. I see. Okay. Hmm. Interesting. Hmm. Interesting. Only 10? And what does this shit drop? Um, yeah. Okay. Okay. But I did not get harm. I'm thinking about my pets on the Amethyst, you know. I think I need survive, survive, survive. I need a survive outpost for that. It's interesting. How much? 49? I think that's enough. Where am I anyway? Why can I see it on there? I'm stupid idiot. Don't talk to me. Anyway, let's make that shit. Compost. Music. Can I go with you? Smoking. Cooking. No, didn't work. Hello? Are you kidding? Are you absolutely kidding? No, I'm asking. How you make smoker anyway? It's... I'm stupid, sorry. Oh, like that. And now I need more. Dun dun dun. Dun dun. Dun 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 dun. This is nice. No, that's what. I think this is nice. It's nice, no? Anyway. That's up there. Give me fucking chest. Give me fucking chest, bitch. I said commandingly. Do I need iron? Let's melt it. No, not that one. Stop that shit. Melt, melt. Melt, melt. Melt, melt, melt. Melt. That's it. What is this? Iron rolling pin? Stupid. Me how far? Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Okay, I'm sorry. I was singing. Yeah, chilling. I think I should make a path over here. Okay. Okay, it's fine. Okay, we're going here. We're going there. We're going here again. Then here. And then we go down. Cut this tree. Then we're going here. Going here. And then we're going here. Right there. Right here. There, right there. There. There, right there. Cut this tree. Cut this tree, I mean. Can you hear that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Probably. Probably not, I mean. No. I think I need dirt here. Don't be kidding. Okay, that's good. Be better. Expand it this way. Then expand it again. And cut this. Cut. This. Nice. Nicely done. Like that. Nice. That's better. That's better. Try. Nice. Nice. Be done. Try this side. Try this side. This side. Try this side. Let's go mine some. I need some designated area for farming dirt, I think. Because this is stupid. Na, 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 na. I think this farmland also needs parking lot. I mean, it cut down tons of area. I think it's needed. Because I'm walking here all the time. Interesting. Okay, this is pretty nice. But I don't think I need this. I just like this, maybe. Oh, that's ugly. Sorry. Done it all this. I only need this up there. Go to here. Maybe you can see. Okay, that's it. It's ceiling though. That's my stone cutter. How you make stone cutter again? I forgot. Okay, I mean. Hello? Okay, is this loud enough for you? I'm just wondering, because I'm not hearing myself for a moment there. Na 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 na. I need iron. Perfect. I know there's iron here. I just failed it. I just found it. It's my instinct. Unbrokenable instinct. Whoa. What am I doing? Right. Iron. No, that's not how it works. What is it? What small I install? Chains. I see. I haven't had it installed, which makes a lot of sense. Interesting, interesting. Here we go. Hmm. Can't it with walls? I mean, interestingly enough. I mean, yeah. This is nice. I have no iron. Fucking piece of shit. Anyway, where's my smoker? I need food to debug. Please grow faster though. Shit, oh my god. Where is it? This is awesome. I'm doing that. You get. This is awesome, mate. Now I can make it raining. No, I don't need railing on this one. Where's my lantern though? So I have it on me. Where's my lantern? It's nice. Wait a minute. What if I did this? No, that's ugly as fuck. What if I did this? Okay, that's nice. But I can escape. That's really not nice. Okay. Interesting. I'm stupid. Thank God. Okay. Let's go. Good. This bit weird. That's farm. That's farm. Third. I need a quarry, man. Somewhere far away. I don't know why I'm chilling all of a sudden though. This was supposed to be an RPG experience, but now I'm just building. It's kinda good. Well, sometimes the best thing is something you didn't plan, right? That's what I heard anyway. Interesting. I'm sorry. Interesting. Don't need this, don't need this. Don't need that, Kalamai. Don't need that. I mean, I need that. Oh, that's fine. Go to the quarry. When it's night, dude. I don't care. It's a bit unbalanced. No, that's idiot. That's idiotic. I think this is more balanced. See? Did it happen? No, that's kind of bad also. But anyway. Where am I doing the stuff though? I'm gonna confuse. I mean, this is epic though, actually. This part right here. And good. Let's make that. Good. Nice. Nice, nice. Nice. And then this is just a regular one. Like, yeah, baby. Don't even talk to me. And this egg is pretty nice. So let's add that. I mean, yeah, basically. Just do this all around so that it connected. Then add this bit here. Bit here, bit here, bit here, bit here, bit here. Then a bit throw this in. One more. One more. That's nice. Then a bit here. Then we're done, I think. Yep, that's it. Let's fix this up. And then this too. Like this. So you can just look at this, look at this. Oh my god. Oh my god, right. And also this, yeah. Then this is sorry. Ah, that's perfect. That is perfect, dude. Dude, this is so good. It's actually so good. This part here. And then this one. And then we can go down here with the farm. That's crazy. More potato, please. I need to eat potato. Anyway, we're sleeping. And then go to the party. Actually, I haven't connected this well. So that's probably first on the matter of business. I think I'm going to like it if we have a connection here. Let's do this, then this, like this, like that. And here, here, and then here, and here. Nice. Just like that. And then place it there. I think this is nice. Now it's all connected. Amazing. Really amazing, dude. Nice. Now it's all connected. Now I think I'm making this my mind. Okay, we just I need timer for this. Let's just make a stone one. But I don't need to mine right now. I need food. I mean, I can just AFK here and waiting for the food to grow, but that is so boring. What can I eat though? Maybe I'll fasten their growth speed, maybe? So fine, it's fine. This is so nice. Let's go to the quarry. Whichever it is. Whichever way it is. I need to go to the quarry though. I need to mine dirt. But far away though. Let's see. I think it's such a nice place to dig around. Anyway, we're clearing the road first. I mean, I almost ran out of iron, so I think I'm prioritizing that first. I mean, I know where the bench of iron is, so let's go there. I forgot I need tools for this job too, so yeah. Where is the path? Go down here, and then go down here, then go down here, go down here, and then this way. Interesting. Like this, like this, this, like this, and then like this. This I think I need to build out, but yeah, like that. Drop that bit, like this. I mean, I can just do. I think this is better. Oh, this is not better. This is better. And then change this to this. Up. Then I'm digging this. Right. Get down there. Then I need to smoothen out this part of it. Then I need to do that. Then do this. No. Giving me this. Then decide this. Then no. Get that down. Get this down. Down. Then this down. This down again. This down. Okay. Okay. That is good. But the little elevation change is really messing me up. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's that. Sorry. Yep, it's a clear path from here. No, this is crazy. This is also hazard. So there. Go here. Let's go here. Go there. Let's go here. There. Go here. Then we go in there, which is as part of this. Okay. Another one. Another drop. Double blow. Okay. Let's try this thing. Killing me. Okay. Oh my god, what is this? Shit, I don't know about that. This is why I want the quarry, guys. Anyway, this is really nice. I think I'll end it there for us now. Because this is kind of far. I need to build a proper path for this. Okay. And iron, so much iron that I don't want to fight monster. Where is my jump? Here it is. Fuck. It's my iron, dude. There it is. Interesting. There it is. Did I get so much iron for that? That's crazy. I think it's one of the mods, like, I mean, I know what mod it is. Oh yeah. Ooh, level 2, but it's almost broken. And so much iron though. Shit, it's broken. I guess I'm going home. Or not? Oh yes. Sorry, I'm going home. How did you spawn? It's just turn it up. Okay, I thought I must turn it up, okay. I sorted my inventory, but I thought I lost something. Which is weird. Could not happen. Why this is not under? Fucking pitch. Oh, you did not. Oh my god. You did not destroy my CO2. God. That's my head. So easy. I'm actually become god at this. Okay. Okay, my guy. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, my guy. My geo. Ah. Okay. Whatever that. This is beyond me. Wait, my base is unsafe? Would you look at that? What the fuck? Now how do we get out of here? That is the question. Oh my god, I'm fucked. Where's the exit? There an exit? There should be an exit, but I can see it. Where? Fuck, I'm almost fall. I mean, I did fall, but I double jump out of it, so it's fine. Fuck you, fuck you. Oh my god, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Okay. It's good though, I really want to go back. I really wanted to go back, I mean. This will... no. No ball, I don't need. What's that? It's... okay, it's fine. Let's make a hammer. Didn't work. Maybe I'm stupid. Is it weapon expanded? Not the... oh, I need. Hammer. Weapon expanded, huh? I need 20 something. Need gold hammer. Need iron hammer. This one does. That's iron. Hammer. This one. Nope. Or maybe. But I on the right block. And 3x3 one area. That should do it. Yep. What am I doing? Let's go mining first, I guess. Let's just up where is the best. Where is the distribution of it? Interesting. Did it not pause? I don't think it paused. So. Why is it not pausing? I'll tell you this. Wait a minute, what the fuck? Iron pickaxe. I really need backpack faster. Oh, you make them anyway? I've kind of forgot. What's that one? No? This one. Simple, huh? I don't think I need backpack tank though. But I need 3 sleeping for or anything in that matter. I don't have one. Wait, I need to hunt cow. Pig, sheep, I mean. We know where we go. I'm searching for sheep, dude. Where is it? Die. Don't worry, they respawn. Don't worry, they respawn. Good. Interesting. Did I already stream for 42 minutes? That's crazy actually. Wait, I need to upload something. I forgot about it. Interesting, okay. Wait a minute. I'm doing something off screen. So let me, okay, they're done. Anyway, I need to see tell you this. Die, you fucking piece of shit. Give me a stare. Give me a rule. And die. Good. Now it's back. So I really need to put this back. I need food, I need food, I need food. Come on. Faster, wait. Cow. Come here. Shut up. Yeah, this is my home. Amazing home. That's insane, okay? I mean, that's reflex. I'm scared, okay? I'm scaredy cat. No, you know what else is a scaredy cat? I don't know, which is why. But I backpack. I need, okay, that is fine. I have all of them. Surely. You get. There you go. Where's my backpack now? I think I'm upgrading it right to iron. Did something just shoot at me? If so, that is wild. That is wild. Only wild. Do I have enough gold for the next one? I don't. Okay. Anyway, I think I'm picking up this. If I can, I cannot. Oh well, that's kinda bad. I just pick up crafting enchantment, that is. That's done there. See there. And what else I can craft? Oh, it maybe? No, I can't. If you pick up maybe? No, I can't. Okay, it's nice. myself in here and this spot now. But I need to smoke. I want golden swap at it. Let's see. I think first we need to make we need to farm iron, then make stuff, you know. We need to get iron, tons of it. Let's go down. What is that? Legend? What? Why is Spinner here? I mean, I don't think I'm strip mining. It's something that would happen to me. And this nice. Ridiculous. Stop scaring me. Ridiculous. Done. Deal. Fuck. Done deal. Let's go. I think I should have I should have also crafted that one. This one. I think. Yeah, let's make that one. Somebody attacking me? So you not. This is scary. So many sound. How many sound there? Where are you? Yep, ran out of. Thank God I'm near one. Wait, it's only 2 XP? Was it? Yeah, it's fun. It's not meant for this, is it? You kidding me? Oh my god. Chill. Oh my god, I'm dead. If that zombie didn't fall off, I'm dead, so crazy. That is so messed up though. Now I'm healing. I'm dead immediately if anyone attack me. This is where I need gold dude. So that this thing never happen again to me. But this is ridiculous. Let's go back. I see iron. Destroyed. Right. Where is my iron? Fuck. Hey. This is. Oh my god. Who the fuck? Where is it coming from? I'm running. Who? Fuck this sound of fucking. What is it? Titan? It sounds like a Titan, but I don't think it is. Which is weird. Where's my iron? I see it. I see a bunch of it. Last time. Here. Burn. Okay. There it is. More iron for me. Let's go down maybe. Okay, that's a fucking bitch. It will have jetted. Nope. I don't wanna go down anymore. I need a safe way to do that. Am I hitting shit? Okay, that's the monster. I don't want to do this, but I need to. Shit, I'm dead. Run. Oh my god. That is such a bad idea. God, I need God hard. God faster. Oh my god, what is this push of fruit? What's happened? Take a bit. Like, what do you mean? That's what I got. What the fuck you mean, dog? I'm going back in, I mean. Wait, what is the bug? Wait, I can safely. Oh, I see an Enderman there, but no. Oh my god, annoying. Fuck, I fall to lava. Fucking idiot. But this is that message, like I did not fall asleep. I did not sleep, I fall to lava, dude. Technically I sleep, but it's not an ice, okay? Fuck. That's fuck. Shit, I almost died. Crazy. Oh my god. Carry. Fucking bitch. Fucking bitch. Fucking bitch, shut up. Oh my god, what is this? What is this joke, dude? Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Again? A dead loot all over again, dude. This shit. Ah, so tired. So tiring. Why do I even need pickaxe it for? What's going on? I can just shift click and destroy everything. Which is nice. Okay, nice. What the fuck, dude? This is weird. Fucking bitch. I thought I have a shield. Where I panic about there. I have a shield. Fucking bitch. Enter cave. Really. Day 15. I hear this, what the fuck? What do you mean I need to swim? What kind of bullshit is this? This is the end of the cave? That goes slower than this. Yep, that's the end. Man. That is such an unnecessary explosion. Where am I going? There's iron there. Interesting. Where am I? There's so much iron. But I'm dead though. I don't know why I'm lighting things up, but I do. Wait, it's going deeper. Fuck you. I really can't deal with fucking parts of the skeleton. Like literally what? What am I supposed to do? Okay, this is good. Make sure nothing spawn. Oh my god, is that the rare zombie dude? Oh my god, paper too? I don't think it's a rare paper, but shit. Oh my god, German. Go back. My god. But I ran out of option to run. Oh my god, I'm dead. Again, dude. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. How did I die, dude? How did I die? It's ridiculous. Let's farm, dude. I don't know. Food. Come on, please go faster. Let's die again, dude. Dying is fun. Let me get more pretty bitch. Let me get food. Ah, yeah. But, sorry, but it's fine, this is fine. We got this, we got this. Got this, dude. Come on. It's fine, this is so much fine. This is fine, okay? Got me? This is fine. Wait, I thought I can double jump there. Where is it? I think it's down here, maybe, somewhere. I forgot. How about do I plan to getting out anyway? Dying? Yes. Oh, here it is. Much damage. There you are. I need that. Come on, please. Yes. Take it. How about this spawning, dude? I need gold so bad, dude. Actually, I need gold so bad. Where am I going? This feels unsafe. Really unsafe, dude. It's fine now. Iron. Or I need that. I need to venture into the depths. Get what I want, which is gold and diamond. I think I just need. I'm saving this apple, dude. But I don't have carrots. I forgot. I need to explore for that. Don't know much to me. Where is this sound coming from? Sounds to me. Make me scared. Where is it? I think I have. I think I have torch somewhere. Is it my backpack? No, I don't have torch in my backpack, which is interesting. But this is magma. Interesting. Where am I going? Oh my god, it's deep dark. You kidding me? You are kidding, dude. Oh, I'm supposed to die. Am I supposed to die again, dude? Is watching me dying fun for you? Nothing will. I mean, I probably can. Because they're glowing so much, but scary. Where is it, dude? Where is it? At least there's no sticker up here. Down here, I mean. Up here, maybe, actually. It's like, there's no sticker. But there's no ore over here, dude. This shit. What am I supposed to do? It looks so useless. Am I supposed to strip mine it here? I mean, what the fuck? I'm not that far deep yet. Which is crazy. I think this is because it's a mountain. But I haven't gone so far much as... How am I planning to get out of it? Kinda bullshit too. I can jump for the other one, which is... I don't know. Wow. There's no striker. Oh. Why is there so much? Oh, it's blinding. It's really blinding. What's actually happening? I have no other way to go down. I'm kinda stuck here, which is annoying. Oh my god, this is so annoying. I'm scared. But I haven't spawned yet. But I haven't spawned yet. And this is the last. I think I'm just side up, mine down. This point I don't care. I need diamond more than I need life. Okay. That's kinda fast. This is scary. I need this diamond. Where is it? Where is it? Am I fucked? That's it? Where is it? I'm fucked, guys. Let's get this and run. Fuck this shit, dude. Fuck this shit. I'm dead. I'm dead as fuck. I'm dead as fuck, bitch. I think that's okay. But it's actually bad. I'm deep now. Interesting. Where am I going? Where am I going? I need a stone. I need a stone.